No one else in the waiting room?
Not.
This is now being recorded.
Okay, let's go. I will go ahead and call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Houston Land Bank for October. Today is October 8th, 2020. It is 12:03 p.m. Start with roll call. Director Zeiss, present. Director Garcia.
Present.
Director Collins. Director Collins is present.
I'm here.
Thank you.
I was on mute.
Director Deonda. I don't see him. Director Galloway.
Present.
Thank you. Director Hall said he was not going to be here. Director Jackson. Don't see her. Director Johnson Rose.
Present.
Thank you. Director Lampley.
Present.
Director Mondragon.
Present.
Director Vasquez. Don't see him either. I think he said he wasn't going to be here. Director Vidnot was also not going to be here. Director Stoneham, ex officio, is not here.
Yeah, she mentioned she wouldn't be here.
Okay. Director Ferran. Just saw him.
Present.
Thank you. Director Marquez.
Present.
Thank you. Director Williams. I don't see yet. And Director Zale, I also do not see. Oh, is someone connecting? Is Director Deonda joined us?
Hi, yes, I'm in.
Hi, is this?
Hi.
Okay, it looks like we have a quorum, so we're moving on. Item number 2, public speakers. Do we have any public speakers registered?
Nobody registered before the deadline of 5 p.m. and I do not see anyone in the room.
Thank you. Moving on, item number 3, adoption of the minutes for the September 10th, 2020 regular meeting. Should be in the board packet. Is there a motion?
Motion to adopt the minutes.
Second.
Thank you, Director Castillo. Seconded by Director Galloway. Any comments? Seeing none, motion to approve or vote to approve. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Item number 4, Chairman's greeting. Greetings all. Thank you all for being here again. I do have a couple quick things before we move on to the next rest of the agenda. We have our next strategic planning meeting this afternoon. And I'd like to put together an ad hoc committee, some of the board members to go back through the last 2 meetings and kind of summarize and distill what we've talked about and what we've learned about the organization, where we want to go, and kind of put together a strategic plan to bring back to the board for final review and approval. So I'll chair that committee. I'd also like Director Lampley, Director Castillo, Director Mondragon, Director Johnson Rose to serve on that committee with me. I only anticipate us meeting once, hopefully for an hour or 2, to kind of get an idea of what we talked about and distill it, and then bring it back to the board. So once we have our final strategic planning, we'll come up with a meeting time for that, and move forward with that strategic plan. The second item of business is the annual talk about lumber pricing, what we've learned so far. And I'd like to move that to the executive committee for consideration and the program committee as well. So Director Lampley, I'd like you to know that as well, because your knowledge of the builders and relationships you have with them, I think, are valuable for that conversation. And so next executive committee meeting, we'll be discussing some of the solutions to that and bring that back to the full board.
Thank you.
Fourth item I have is reminder, not that this group needs it, to go vote coming up in the November election. Vote early, vote safe, vote by mail if you can. The fourth item is go Astros. Let's close it out tonight. And that's all I have. Moving on to committee reports. Item number 5. Looks like Director Vignot is not here for the Finance Committee, so I will do hers. The Finance Committee did meet on Tuesday afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to let you know that I'm in the call.
Thank you, Director Jackson. That is noted. And welcome. We met Tuesday afternoon, spoke about the audit, which found no deficiencies. You'll see the final audit package or audit letter was emailed out to the board this morning. And we spoke about cash flow issues, of which we're having none. And we spoke about invoicing with the city, which we're caught up and ready to go. I think that's all we discussed. Gonzalo, did I leave anything out that was important?
We've enabled and the reimbursement. That's really it. That's the other main bullet point. So.
Okay. Thank you. Program committee, Director Lampley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The program committee meeting from September. The committee received a builder's request to purchase an additional lot due to unforeseen development issues on the lot recently purchased from us, which has caused significant delay with the builder's progress. Therefore, the program committee is recommending that we move forward with a request to the board for approval of an additional lot to the developer. You run into a water line issue on a lot purchased from us, and it is on today's agenda 7C, and so we recommend moving forward with that action item for approval. The committee also reviewed multiple requests from builders with maximum sell prices increases that's due to the recent lumber costs spike in lumber prices that you mentioned earlier in your report. Out of the 4 builders who submitted written requests, approximately 12 lots were approved for price increases because significant documentation and justification was submitted to evidence their current price for lumber increase, and 4 more lots will be approved once the builders submit their additional information for us for consideration. That documentation. The increased range in those requests average about from anywhere from 8,000 to about 25,000, with the higher end being the most homes that are being built in the flood zones. So that's having some impact on their pricing and increase as well. And the new home sales prices range from $199,753 to our ceiling of $212. We believe that there's about 5 additional lots that cannot currently be approved because they're asking a request beyond the 212 ceiling. We'll have more discussion to bring those back for some consideration, as you mentioned in your report. The committee also discussed the current market for lumber prices and is looking into ways that the organization can not only acknowledge but thoroughly research the situation and then devise an informed plan for action for the builders for consideration with board approval. So this is becoming more of a policy issue as we move forward with that item. The committee also discussed and approved a street abandonment request that came from the city of Houston in one of our lots in our City Gas subdivision. And so we have concurred with that request and made that back to the recommendation back to the city. There was no impact to our lot. The committee has also discussed the remaining round 2 contracts, which there are 5 on today's agenda for consideration under item 7B, and is the recommendation of the committee that we approve those in board action today. That concludes my report. I hope that was tried to submit that in the most simplest way as possible for clarity. But there are some detailed discussions that need to take place on particularly those price increases above our ceiling. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lampley. And you're right, that is an issue I think we'll be grappling with in the coming months is the cap of $212,000 for our home prices, and we'll be considering all the options around that. So thank you. Director Castillo, Oversight Committee.
Thank you, Chair. We use this time to provide an update on the policies and procedures update document. At the last meeting, the item was tabled for a future meeting with the City of Houston's procurement and development officers. Happy to report that that meeting did take place with Chair Zeiss, Director Stoneham, and Houston Land Bank staff. I'd like to thank you all for participating in that meeting. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, but no policy changes were suggested as a result of the meeting, which is what we had anticipated. The procurement policy section was also shared with legal counsel for review, and there were some minor edits that were made, and those are in your board packet on pages 68 and 69. You can see what those proposed edits are. So we anticipate that all the review that was done is thorough, and we can wrap this up today. The Oversight Committee hasn't formally met during this process because we have had a number of weekly meetings and one-off meetings to get this document through. So we will resume our monthly Oversight Committee meetings in November, and we will take up the lot maintenance contract and do a 6-month look back on how we're performing on that. Unless there are any questions, that will conclude my report.
Thank you, Director Castillo. Director Johnson-Rose, Partnership Committee.
Hello, good afternoon to the board. The Partnership Committee did have the opportunity to meet on last week. A few updates that I want to provide for the board. One is on Hope Farms. That is the urban farming nonprofit that we've had a couple of discussions with on possibly creating a partnership with them to have urban farms on some of our hard to build lots. This is in the early planning phases, and we have not identified a suitable lot for them yet, but did want to just keep the board aware of it. Secondly, we talked about a lender webinar. This is something that we've been wanting to do for the past few months, and it will be scheduled towards the end of the month of October, early November. But looking forward to building a network of lenders who are aware of our building programs. Thirdly, the staff had a meeting with the Greater Houston Builders Association. They did discuss the lumber pricing and received some feedback from them. Just so that the board will know, the feedback that GHBA had was that they felt like the spike in lumber was temporary, and that the availability would return once the mills have caught up, but warned that the prices may not go down to pre-COVID levels. So this may be a new norm that everyone has to settle into. Additionally, GHBA offered to organize a group of builders to work with us as a focus group for future sessions on programs and additional ways that the land bank could partner with the Greater Houston Builders Association. In addition, we discussed and brainstormed a few other philanthropic organizations that we could maybe use to help relieve lumber pricing. So one solution is the builders being able to go up on their pricing, but a better solution may be to look at what philanthropic organizations we can engage to be able to keep the pricing low, but assist the builders also. And then lastly, the staff had an ongoing conversation with LISC. Many of you all are probably familiar with Local Initiative Support Corporation. They spoke with them about being a lender to some of our builders, as well as potentially helping the land bank with acquisition financing. Both, again, preliminary conversations, but wanted to make the board aware. So partnership committees meet every month. If you want to be engaged with us, please let me know, and we will definitely love to have you join us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Johnson Rose. Appreciate the update. Item number 6, President's Report. President Haynes.
Unmute usually helps. That was the agenda. Briefly, I was just going to show our dashboard for the purposes of discussion. But as you heard from many of the committees, it's been a busy month. I don't think there'll ever be a non-busy month. And we really appreciate all of the time and energy everybody puts into the committees and the time that we have been requesting. Just briefly, the audit is complete. That is exciting. We'll obviously discuss that later. But I just think in terms of it's the timeliest submission to the city of the audit, and obviously great findings, especially given the fact that this past year had a significant amount of different types of transactions. So thanks to Gonzalo and Conchita and the team for really pushing on that to get it all together. Just to build on Director Johnson Rose's report, this has been a month where we've been trying to really expand our network and work with a variety of different organizations. As you heard from a number of the people that we have been speaking with, specifically around the lumber pricing, but also potential program expansion. We had a great conversation with the LIFT Fund, which is a statewide CDFI, and their current Ascend program, which works with early stage builders and mid-stage builders in terms of business development, and are very excited about partnering with us to help support the curriculum for our Startup Builder program and certainly develop a stronger relationship between the two organizations. We also have a meeting coming up with SETH, which is the Southeast Texas Housing Finance Corporation, and Director Marquez. This originally came as a suggestion from you, probably I don't want to say a year ago, but we have a conversation with them to understand a little bit more about their homebuyer assistance programs. They wouldn't be someone we'd look at for acquisition financing per se, but another great resource. So again, this is our goal to really continue to look at, and we'll talk a lot more about that today in strategic planning, looking for additional resources and partnerships that help us accelerate our programming. Just in terms of the dashboard, we continue to work with home buyers, both people that call in looking for affordable housing, and we route them through our 2 programs, as well as the home buyers that we're doing closings with and or ones that have purchased properties from us and would still need support on some of the transition of utilities, permit alarms, and things like that. This was a little bit slower month for transactions with 1 lot sold. And again, that's mostly a follow-up to the 12 or so that sold in the previous couple of months. And we have obviously some more closings coming up based on September and October approvals. And we have been working very much to kind of really refine with housing, the new home development program sort of pipeline, so that we really understand what's coming down the pike and making sure that we can get into a pre-sales set of activities. Between the 2 programs, there's about 72 properties under development right now. So that's quite busy. And again, you know, some of the builders that are having issues with pricing and are going into construction, we really want them to keep staying under production. Others have chosen to potentially slow down a little bit, and others are just not at that place where they have to purchase lumber at this point. So this is a variety of stages of development. We continue to do due diligence on a number of the properties that are under contract, and we have been reporting regularly to the executive committee, and we'll continue to bring this up to board level once we have some additional analysis completed. And I think, you know, the most important thing is that we are creating more of a regular activity of builder touches. I wanted to bring this up. We're on Friday. We've improved the way that we do construction reporting for builders monthly to use our actual property management system. And we had a builder forum to walk through how to use this new system, and actually quite a good response rate. So between surveys about lumber pricing to being available, all staff is available to builders when they call. I think we continue to keep that conversation flowing, which I think is really important. So I was going to stop this. I believe in terms of the president's report, there's much more that we could go into relative to weekly day-to-day activities. We still have an RFQ for legislative services support up and out. It closes on October 16th now. We extended it by a week. And then we just closed the RFQ for grant writing and technical assistance services for the EPA Brownfields grant opportunity that I mentioned last month. That is due at the end of this month. And that would be a coalition application with the city and with Avenue CDC. And it would be a resource that we could not only use for lots that are in our inventory, but also extend that to properties in the neighborhoods in which we work for phase 1 and 2 assessments. So it's actually a great resource. Many land banks across the country have this type of resource. I think the only other thing I was going to mention before going to the lumber pricing update is that we have sold in our traditional program, we have sold 21 homes to date in 2020. And that we are continuing to process and are almost at the end of all of the former Lara dollar lot sales. We've only, I think, about 7 lots left, 4 contracts that are still on hold, but we're almost through that entire process, which is great. And that's what's providing an amplification of some of the development that we're seeing. And I did on the new home development program, we actually have a closing today and a closing tomorrow. 32 houses sold to date, 7 under contract with these 2 that are closing today. None are listed for sale right now, although we're ready to do 5 of them that we anticipate being turned over to us. We know something about an issue with the builder who was building those, which is why we don't have them yet. We do know that there's an expected group of home buyers that are looking forward to those being listed, and another 14 are under development by the city, and we'll hope to see those as well this fall. That being said, we're certainly keeping up with demand. We've got quite a list now, and we are looking for that supply to continue. And especially when people call in are not qualifying for the 80% and below AMI for the new home development program, we are continuing our effort to try and connect those buyers with our builders. So certainly we can be helpful and supportive of our builders to provide a pipeline of home buyers. So you'll see more of that. Just actually, I'm going to reverse what's on the agenda. Briefly, we did review last month an RFQ for planning services. There were 2 parts to that. Was an RFQ, RFP. The RFQ, we selected qualified firms to help support us for planning activities. These would be very small, generally, planning activities and or research that we would do from affordability to economic development. These would be small scopes of work. Those 8 firms that we selected or pre-selected were James Lima Planning and Development and HR&A Advisors, which are really economic development and finance related consultants. Community Lattice, which is an environmental expertise consultant, very small women-owned business. And then firms that were selected for planning, which were the pre-qualified firms that then advanced to stage 2, which we'll talk about in a second. Torty, Gallis and Partners, Gensler, APD Urban Planning and Management, UTEAL, and Asakura Robinson. These firms would be on a list of pre-qualified firms that does not guarantee work, but as we have small scopes of work, when we're looking at a larger parcel for how many properties or houses would fit on a lot, this is the kind of firm that we would reach out to on a work order basis. Most of these requests over the next 2 years, which this set of firms would be qualified, are very small. You know, these are $5,000 to $10,000, and we certainly would always be looking for best value, best price, which is as we're being advised by procurement council. The stage 2 of this was to take the top 5 scoring firms on the planning and review with a selection committee, a firm for the RFP for Setagast. And we will talk about that later. So I'm going to wait for the actual board agenda item to go into that. But I wanted to mention the pre-qualified planning consultants. And lastly, which of course, drum roll please, I'm looking for the lumber pricing.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, yes.
Not a problem. Go ahead.
Did you have a question? I'm sorry, Director Collins.
No,
okay.
I don't.
Okay. Okay, so hopefully this is going to work. Can you all see lumber pricing slides? Okay. This is really a summary slide of all the things that had been voiced in our initial session. kind of summarized with where we are on the different sets of activities. We did send out a builder survey of about 6 or 7 questions to 32 pre-qualified builders. We received 7 responses, although we had 2 non-survey responses that I'm aware of that came up with some of the pricing increase. So we're using those to kind of tabulate the breadth of what is the current lumber pricing, that they're finding, who are their suppliers, how they actually purchase lumber, whether they do it per project or in bulk, and issues with delivery as opposed to just the pricing. So really that is good data for us to understand with our current builders what's happening. We are looking at trying to finalize affordability range evaluation and research to help us review what our price cap at 212. If we thought we could afford to increase that price cap and remain affordable, and this will be a board level discussion. All we're doing right now is the research that will generate into the executive and program committees this month to discuss whether or not we would raise our cap in certain conditions, for certain conditions. And we are continuing to refine that information. And I'll show you a preliminary look at what this might look like. We've reached out to partners, initial calls have been made, continue to look at the moment, it does not appear that any one of our initial partners that we reach out to are doing anything in particular right now to accommodate these lumber pricing increases. There, certainly a level of belief that these are temporary spikes. And so some of the larger builders are going to be waiting on production. Other entities have not, the city, for example, in their new home development program, have not received any requests for changing their current process because I think lumber had already been procured. Ultimately continue to keep a conversation going. We've reached out to some suppliers. We have a few more based on our builder responses to reach out to. Most of them are saying a 50 to 70% increase. And builders are saying that their sales prices are having to be bumped up or considered 6 to 10% because lumber is really just a piece of an overall package, obviously. So if a lumber per board foot goes up 50 to 70%, or sometimes we've heard doubling the price, that's still only a certain percentage of the overall cost of construction. Jumping ahead, we did do a query to the land bank network. It is a nationwide problem. Many of the land banks have heard this. Not as many land banks are doing a lot of new construction, so it is not as much of a significant issue. There is one land bank that is actually starting to look at cooperative purchasing and having a warehouse of supplies to be able to support builders. But what we've understood from them is a very large undertaking and probably something that we wouldn't do for a short-term activity. But again, no decision has been made yet. Determining the average cost to build, based on our initial RFQ responses by builders, the 1,200 square foot sample pro forma was approximately on average $160,000 to build, 159,733. We still have to tally some of the actual applications we've received for the cost to build, for the average cost to build, but that just helps us ground kind of if you have a 10 or 15% increase on that price, that's what we're looking at. Of course, that doesn't include all the additional costs, development costs that go into houses. Innovation in construction and sourcing, there were a lot of suggestions for that, which were great. I think those are longer term efforts that we need to start working with builders on their specific plans and the ways that they are constructing to see if there's some any savings that we could get on that. And then an additional question that I had missed the first time around, the length of time that Harvey spikes leveled out. And this is really not, I've not done extensive research, but a couple of people have mentioned it was 6 to 9 months, depending on the building type or material type. And that although lumber might have been one spike, 6 months later, it was drywall, so it wasn't sort of all at once. It was sort of a series of things, but certainly just trying to understand how these things do go up and come down and level off. And I believe, we talked about this the first meeting, just in a sense that we're really trying to balance a number of different policy objectives. And we've got a few levers we can work with, which is schedule, subsidy, or a strategy to be able to alternatively purchase materials. And I think for contract, the questions that we're trying to answer and we'll finalize is contract price increases. Yes, approximately the 6% increases, the 10% increases up to the 212 cap. We're moving forward with that so that we can keep getting production on the ground. But things are above the 212 cap really have to be determined with our affordability ranges. Can we temporarily agree to contract extensions? We haven't really gotten that specific a request yet, but I think our goals are, again, to meet the affordability crisis and keep getting production going. So absent some significant requests for contract extensions, we'll continue to monitor that. The affordability, what sales price is really manageable for the home buyers that we have in our pool. This is really a critical question, because even if they could qualify now for higher affordability, it is that affordability over time. And given the unknowns with COVID and people's jobs conditions, we really want to be very careful about how we consider that. We may figure out that there's a range of what our price cap is, and it's sort of dependent on the product, i.e. more square footage may be obviously more lumber and more of a spike, and might be an affordability that is available to a larger family size. But again, that's something we really need to dig into. Collective purchasing, our initial thought process and review on this seems like for a short-term situation, it would be a significant, almost a new business line. And the Greater Houston Builder Association said that after Harvey, an entity did come into Houston that does collective purchasing for smaller builders. They sent us a name and that we need to follow up, but it may be something that we could just align with as opposed to start our own program. And then developing a one-time subsidy for materials price increases. I think, again, this is sort of something where we would weigh, how do we support the builder and the home buyer at the same time? And what resources do we have either internally or from potentially other sources, a philanthropic source or otherwise, to keep production going? And again, these are all the things that we need to weigh, and probably in the next month, refine a set of solutions depending on the conditions that we have. And Doris will be doing a little bit more analysis of the different builders that we have and where they might be in their process, and if they might sort of really encounter this issue of lumber pricing. This is not to be looked at as more of a really broad stroke of how we might start to look at sort of our current home price average of 197 or additional higher prices, whether at the cap at 212 or 230,000. You can see that on the left side, how much it costs per month for different buyers. And this is a complete assumption based on various, there's a lot of variables in terms of the interest rate for home buyers, the specific location where they're in, and sort of the assessed tax that might be there, as well as credit score of home buyers. So this is really a very broad brush approach to just making sure that the average monthly mortgage payment has a little bit of room underneath what is considered affordable, which is 30% of your gross income or your net income per month. So again, we're not the researchers, but actually Kinder Institute just did an extensive study for Harris County. And so we're trying to build off of that and look at it specifically with Houston and our neighborhoods to look at what these ranges could be. So again, this is not final data. This is just to kind of give an indication of where these price caps might lead to and how close we're cutting it in terms of what we would consider affordable. And I think, as you all have mentioned in different times, it's not just about someone purchasing a house day one, but how does that affordability last through the time that they own the house? And it is really important for us, given that we're in the business of sometimes getting tax foreclosed properties, and we certainly wouldn't want our buyers to be in that position. So we need to be thinking about that very creatively. So this is just to give you an update of the amount of research that we've done to date. We certainly want to drill into some of these details a bit more. And I think, as Matt said earlier, look forward to this month's committee meetings so that we can really dive into what we would like to do short and long term. I think there's some opportunities to both look at this short and long term. So that concludes my report, but I'm obviously available for any questions that anyone has.
I have a couple of comments, Ann. First of all, on the slide where it says anything 30% and below is affordable, that is not correct. Under HUD guidance, anything 30% and below is considered very low income. affordability is 80% and below average medium income is considered affordable. Also, when you're showing the prices of affordability, if you could actually start showing where that affordability is in the affordability range, i.e. reflect if 197,000 is 120% of AMI or 80% AMI, if we could reflect that so that we know when we are truly meeting affordability. But affordability is 80% and below average medium income, 30% is very low.
Oh,
But
yeah.
50% and below is moderate, and then 80 to 60 is affordable.
Thank you. And I'm on the second comment relative to the affordability range and showing that AMI there. Thank you for that. Absolutely happy to update the sort of way that we're conveying that information so that's easier. That was focused mostly on the 120% AMI, which our current program is. And I might have misspoken, but when I mentioned 30%, it wasn't AMI. Generally, you don't, whether or not you are considered housing burdened or not is if you're spending more than 30% of your net income per month on your housing costs. And so that is to look at making sure that we were not exceeding for any monthly payments that a home buyer would have to do, exceeding that 30% of net income. So I'm sorry.
Can you go back and show that slide? Because I think the way the wording is on that slide it's unclear.
Okay. Absolutely. I don't think I put a note on there, but I absolutely should. So
yeah, at the top, it says anything that is 30% and below of your monthly net income would be affordable. That's an incorrect statement.
Okay, I will edit that.
Hey, Ann, on collective purchasing?
Yes.
I think that maybe we should approach or inquire with the Texas Association CDC and see if they have any programs, since they already have a membership and their missions along the same lines as ours.
Yep, that's a good point.
Okay. Thank you, President Haynes. Any other questions, comments?
I guess the only other, I guess it's just point of clarification. In the slide and where you show the subsidies, that subsidy is referencing subsidy to the homeowner as opposed to subsidies to a builder.
You know, that is, I think that's one of our conversations to have. I actually just meant subsidy in general, because it could be absolutely, instead of subsidizing the builder, we're actually subsidizing the buyer. You know, we can increase the price cap, but then subsidize the buyer. I mean, I don't know legally how, you know, how that would work, but yeah, that's a very good clarification in some sense of what we can actually make some decisions on.
Okay, because my first glance at it, I thought it was you were implying subsidy, for example, through some down payment assistance toward the buyer side. So, okay.
It can be either, and really that's our it's sort of it's an interesting dilemma, because in this effort we're trying to actually support both of them, and so I think how the money flows is absolutely a thing we have to define for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And piggybacking on what Curtis said a little bit, when it comes to subsidies, you know, I think that's an interesting way that we can, or a unique way that we can serve our home buyers, or I guess soon to be potential homeowners, in that perhaps, let's say for example, the lumber price increases the selling cost of the house by, just for square numbers, $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I know we're dealing with folks looking for low-income housing, but perhaps they'll say, you know what, I'll take that $5,000 extra into my mortgage if you can give me $5,000 subsidy up front, because really today, right now, what I need is a washer and dryer so we can do laundry, because we may have lived in an apartment for an extended period of time and we were used to the in-unit appliance, and now below that money for appliances so we can have a set standard of living, or perhaps something else. even smaller appliances, toaster, blender, things like that. Or I don't know. I'm just thinking holistically of like how we can help them, through the process of getting into your home. Maybe it's moving cost. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's furniture. Maybe it's beds. Maybe now that maybe they were all used to being in a 2-bedroom, and now they have a 3 or 4 bedroom. Hey, crap, we don't have money to buy 2 more sets of beds. But like, I guess offering the flexibility or having a little bit of fluidity in how they can adjust for the lumber costs may be kind of a blessing in disguise for some of these potential buyers.
Yeah.
So that was one thought. And the other thought too, you mentioned warehousing, or a sort of collective place to store material, specifically lumber. I think that's going to be a huge operational undertaking for us. I mean, I like the idea, particularly if there's scrap from one house to the other that we can kind of consolidate the additional to reduce waste. And I was even thinking, hey, down the road, a year or 2 down the road, if a home buyer, someone that recently purchased a home has an issue with something, maybe, I don't know, they got a puppy chew up the baseboard, and they're like, we don't really have the bandwidth to do that. Well, hey, we happen to have 60 linear feet of baseboard in our warehouse. You're welcome to help yourself to it. Things like that. But I think that may be getting into some muddy waters where we may be in over our head operationally. I like the thought.
It's certainly something that could be sort of a long-term look at whether or not there's an opportunity for us in some way, shape, or form. But we realize, like, if this is again, it could last for a long time, but if it's 6 to 9 months, just getting a lease on a warehouse space might take, so it's certainly looking at an organization. And again, I don't have the name in front of me, but a group that apparently already does some sort of collective purchasing that came after Harvey, and that we will reach out to and see if we can set up either, an account or a program with them, because that may be a benefit. But we just wouldn't do all the heavy lifting, no pun intended. By the way, my first job, besides my dad's shop, was at a lumber yard. So I have some background. I'm very
Well, that's
proud.
why I think that if you have like the Texas Association CDCs, they have a program, and then they could set it up directly with the vendors, that Home Depot stores everything, while and every other CDC in the state of Texas could go and access to it and get the benefit from it. But the one other thing I wanted to mention, going to cost, remember in the new performa that we allowed 10% contingency for new construction, which normally the new construction is 5%. So just keep that in mind when you evaluate.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a very good point. Like the new pro forma actually has that contingency in there for just these types of things. So absolutely. Yes, these are mostly most of the requests have been from the old pro forma and prior time. But that's a great point to remind us. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. President Haynes, anything else?
I don't think so, unless I forgot something.
Seeing no other comments, moving on to item number 7, board action items. 7A, consideration and possible action to adopt updates to Houston Land Bank policies. I believe this is in your board book with the new changes from the legal department, for legal counsel on the procurement issues. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt updates to the Houston Land Bank policies.
Thank you, Director Castillo. Is there a second? Second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Director Mondragon. Discussion.
I'd like to add a friendly amendment to the motion that the policy has an annual review for changes. Of course, we can make changes at any point, but I'd like to have an annual review so we can learn over time what works, what adjustments may need to be made, or even new policies added to the program.
Okay, very good suggestion. Thank you, Director Lampley. And would that be a committee review, or do you envision that as a committee review or a full board review, or how do you envision that?
Yes, I'd like to add to that motion that be by committee, and then brought back to the board for approval. Just the same process that we just implemented.
Okay. Thank you.
That needs to be accepted by the maker of the initial motion.
Correct.
I'd accept that friendly amendment.
Director Mondragon, do you concur?
Second still stands with a friendly amendment. Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments? No. Yes, Mr. Benson.
Just a quick note. It's page 26 of the packet, page 7 of the proposed policies. There's at the bottom of that page, there's already language in there that says these policies shall be reviewed and adopted at least annually by the board of directors with any amendments or modifications therein.
Okay. Thank you for that. Should we add the oversight committee to that language to make sure that it's
Do I need to change my motion to add that we establish a date, a stamp date for the review, and that would be an annual review with a review starting October 1st of next year.
Okay.
I would accept that as well.
Thank you, Director Castillo.
Just for clarification, Matt, would you just go ahead and repeat what the motion is?
Yes. So the current motion, as I understand it, is to adopt the updated policies for the Houston Land Bank with the amendment to ensure an annual review by the Oversight Committee to be approved by the board starting October 1st of 2021.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any further comments or considerations? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Item number 7B, consideration and possible action to accept program committee and staff builder lot selection recommendations for the HLB housing initiative. This is items 1 through 5. I would like to take these as a group, but if we want to take them separately, we can. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Director Lampley. Is a second?
A second.
Second by Director Galloway. Any discussion?
Yes. Is this the one that Mr. Lampley? I'm trying to see through my material. Is this the one that he was speaking of? Is this in his report?
I did reference these in my report, but there's also item C that I referenced as well. So I'm not sure which item.
Okay. What I was referring to, you were speaking about the increase from the bills on the purchase of the land.
No, these are nominations from our round 2 approval
For the builders.
of builders. Yes.
Okay, no problem. Okay, that's the wrong one. All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
This starts on page 70. That's where the memo starts.
Okay.
And sorry that it's such a big document. This
It sure is, because I've been I've been fiddling through this. I said, where am I? Okay, you call for the question.
Would you kindly repeat what the motion is on the table again?
Well, and I'll read through all 5 items with the HCAT numbers for the record.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
just getting you ready. Making sure there's no other discussion. Hearing no other discussion, the motion on the table is for 7B, consideration and possible action to accept the program committee and builder lot selection recommendations for HLB housing initiative is to approve this item. Item number 1, 4306 Alvin, HCAT number 0690150060010, with the proposed sales price of $23,842 to Olive Builders. Item number 2, 8510 Safeguard, HCAT number 0761490010010 for $21,242 to Next Generation Development. Item number 3, 4403 Alvin, HCAD number 069-015-002-0015 for $17,817 to Next Generation Development. Item number 4, 4328 Brinkley, HCAD number 069-015-009-0025 for $16,417 to Next Generation Development. And item number 5, 7312 Hoffman, HCAD number 066-025-008-0797 for $12,954 to Elevate Opportunity Zone Fund. And the motion is to approve this item. All those in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Item number 7C, consideration and possible action to accept program committee and staff recommendation to award approved builder MHL Properties LLC an additional lot under the revised build program guidelines for 0 Brinkley. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Lampley. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Galloway. Discussion? Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7D, consideration and possible action to authorize the CEO president to execute a contract with APD Urban Planning Management in an amount not to exceed $83,918 for urban planning services related to SETI Gas community development opportunity.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I don't feel we can move forward on this particular action. This action was incurred through an RFQ process. The RFQ process was never presented to the board for approval. Therefore, I don't think we can take action on this item.
Mr. Lampley, I want to correct, I recall it being presented but not approved because the board had questions about it, and I don't recall the board approving it.
That's my point. It was never an agenda item. It was part of a discussion in the president's report.
So I don't believe that the board needs to approve RFQs.
According
RFQs
to,
are sent by staff, but the contracts need to be approved by the board.
according to our new policy, any RFQ in excess of $50,000 would need board approval.
Contract.
Any contract would need approval of $50,000, but not RFQs or RFPs.
Mr. Chairman, this is Courtney Bowles. I served on the, I guess, committee to look at the applications, et cetera. I think Krista Stoneham and a couple others served too. So for the board to just know, I don't understand the process of whether or not, what has to be approved by the board.
Speak up a little louder, please.
Yes, I'm sorry, sir. No, I was sharing with the chairman that I did participate with the selection and interviews and things of that nature for this particular vendor, the top 5 and things of that nature. So there was a process, but I don't know whether or not the board approves the process and the letting of the actual RFQ, or whether the board approves just the actual contract. But just so the board will know, there was a process that a couple of board members were a part of that led us to this selection.
Sure, and I would like to clarify my actions is that there's no intent for my actions that I'm requesting to be a distraction from the work of the committee and the review teams, because that action was done with the request from administration. And what I'd asked for when the subject was originally brought up 4 months ago, 3 months ago, that number one, that the RFQ process should have come to the board for review and a vote for consideration. And I was told that there was insufficient time to bring this to the board for consideration. And so again, this is another, and I hate to be anal about processes and procedures, but this is another action item that really, I think the board has the authority to approve actions for staff. And this is one where I particularly feel that the board is not being considered and the board is not being asked for permission to proceed forward with the expenditure of funds and assignment of tasks to other committees. And so that's my principal concern with it. It's not in the policy, I understand, but that's another reason why I asked for an annual policy review, such that we can review our operation procedures over time and make recommendations for changes and consideration for changes, rather, that we deem warranted.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Noticing this, my question is, did we hire an urban planning in the for the complete community for Acres Home?
The city hired the planning companies for all of the complete communities reports, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, so we're gonna hire one for the city gas through through HLB?
Yes.
Is that what you said? And not the city?
Yes, in this case, yes, working with the city, but yes.
So,
okay. Go ahead, Matt.
I think that the goal here is a little bit different than Acres Homes because the area that we're looking at instead of gas is undeveloped, and it is essentially greenfield. And so
it is undeveloped. It's no more undeveloped than Acres Home.
The portion we're looking at is undeveloped.
There are no streets.
Correct.
That's the portion of Sedagas. There are no streets right now.
Let me correct that, Ms. Haynes. There are streets in Acres Home. It's just that in the forested area, there are no streets. But all the places where we own lots have streets.
You meant city gas.
In city gas. The railroad track to Lay Road and over to Homestead Road and over to HEIGHT. East of HEI, I can't spell it. East of HAIGHT, there's a vacant land, which is 1/3 the size of Sedagas. So let's keep the facts straight, please.
That's correct. And that's the area we're looking at. We're looking at the area is east of Houston Street and south of Houghton Street. I'm sorry, west of East Houston Street and south of Houghton Street, which is an area that has platted streets, has platted roads, but physically there is no pavement there. And so this is an area where HLB owns lots with other private individuals. And this plan or this proposal is to make a plan for that area to develop it in a way that is keeping with the neighborhood around it. So private developers don't come in and just build whatever they want to build and subdivide lots. This is an area to keep it in a manner of the rest of Sedagas.
Okay, well, are you kind of putting the cart before the horse? I mean, wouldn't it be better to first to go into the community to get some ideas and survey before you have a planner to come in and plan for them and bring stuff to them instead of them buying into it at the very beginning and then get someone to assist a planner to assist from that point?
And that is what this consultant will do. The consultant will meet with the neighborhood and the community.
But we don't need to hire nobody. I mean, we have the resources from the staff just to get an idea as to just to meet with the community to get what they want. They have a super neighborhood council. I mean, they have a network where you just have a meeting with them from the land bank and then you can.
I'm sorry.
Then you can get some idea as to what, and go from there as a someone planning it out for them.
We have been reaching out to many of those stakeholders that you mentioned, and we have absolutely been trying to understand what the community wants. The planner's role is to essentially take that information, work with us to continue to work with the community and what their vision for the neighborhood is, and sort of take all of the different pieces of information, including new ordinances that have happened in the last 10 to 15 years and other kinds of things about development that we have to keep in consideration. They come up with a concept plan just to sort of look at how many houses on all these lots and what is the infrastructure requirements, meaning not just services, but also the roadways, increasing things that are public policy interest of the city right now, whether it's bike lanes or whatever, ultimately to get the neighborhood to a planning standpoint, so we could do a cost estimate for the infrastructure, because the city would like to figure out how to publicly finance the infrastructure. There may not be CIP funds or a developer participation agreement funds available to be able to pay for this infrastructure. In order to sell lots, we need to have the infrastructure at least in the planning form or going forward to be able to sell lots to a developer. This scope is simply for the community engagement, developing a vision, helping the city evaluate the infrastructure costs so that they can think about how they want to finance that infrastructure, and working with the community to make sure that the character and scale of everything that would be developed, not just on our lots, but ultimately in the whole neighborhood, would be essentially acceptable to the neighborhood and keep that community character. That helps provide a roadmap for including the private developers, including the Van Pelt family that does own quite a bit of property in that area. That roadmap would be essentially starting with community input and then develop the drawings that actually convey that insight and ultimately the cost estimate and the public finance strategy. So that is what we're doing. And all of this is because at some point we would like to sell those lots, and we'd like to sell those lots that are absolutely within community interest and what they would like to see there, as well as what would really achieve a great distribution of affordable housing in the area. We are not expecting to replat. The plats are there, but there's forest in and around and between all of those parcels. That's what we're trying to assess, what it takes to put that whole area into development.
So this is just the first step is information gathering and coalescing to try to develop a plan that, and we'll watch this as they go through. And if we don't like the plan they come up with, we'll either tell them to go back to the drawing board or find another firm to do it. So this is just the first step in a long process of getting a plan in place that is amenable to the neighborhood, amenable to the board, and making sure that it works for infrastructure and for the rest of the city.
It's going to cost us this amount of money. My God. Okay. Yeah.
It is a significant sum, but if it means preserving the rest of this neighborhood and preserving this area to look like the rest of setting and not have development and subdivide lots, I think it's a smaller cost.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to go on record, which was my comment when this was discussed a few months ago, that it seemed that this was something that was more of a city undertaking than our undertaking. It had been indicated by our CEO that the city had approached her about doing this. And as Ms. Galloway has indicated, in terms of the cost, I just don't believe that this should be our undertaking, maybe us in partnership with the city. But I just don't still believe that this should be our undertaking. And it seems that, again, we seem to be jumping and putting the cart before the horse, because I think that there is still some things that we can do with the community before we take on this level of expenditure. So I will be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, this would be in partnership with the city. We have a working group with the planning department, the housing department, and public works. And our funding comes from our budget, which is funded by HCDD.
And do we have a written correspondence from the city inviting us to engage in this project?
No, I have notes from a number of meetings. Would you like those notes?
No, I want to know, I'm trying to figure out how we got to this point.
I have those notes and I can send those notes to the board.
I think the mayor wanted this to be one of his priorities.
Yeah, the Director Aiken has also mentioned this to me as well, not in writing, but in conversations, that this is also a priority of his as well, that he does not want this area to change from what it historically has been. And that it echoes the mayor.
And he's the one that's really interested in the public finance evaluation and what infrastructure is required and how he's going to be able to make sure that the infrastructure happens.
Mr. Chair, this is Courtney. I'm still trying to clarify for the board to approve a contract. What do the policies say? That the board approves the RFP or before it's let, or does the board approve the contract before it's signed?
The board approves all contracts above $50,000. It does not approve RFPs or RFQs before they are let.
Okay.
Before what?
Before they are let out to the public, before they are distributed.
They are made aware
Hey,
which happened, but now that it's time to sign, now the board has to vote before it's signed.
Correct.
Okay, so I need to just clarify and understand.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Matt,
Yes, sir.
does the RFP, RFQ have to come out of committee though?
No.
I don't believe it does.
We
I
Would
do
you
not.
think it would have to have, it has to come where somebody is on the board or a committee is involved and participates in the process, right?
They participate in the selection process, but as far as writing the RFP and distributing it, I don't believe the board needs to be involved in that.
Except that this was discussed at the program committee and the executive committee numerous times from January through May. And I have the notes for that as well.
Thank you.
And this was also in the budget for the year,
Yes.
correct? That was already approved in the by the budget?
Yes.
In the budget, when we approved the budget?
Under professional services, yes. It was
Let me
anticipated.
make it perfectly clear that I'm questioning a procedural process, and so I'm not questioning the integrity of what has been undertaken. Is simply from a procedural standpoint, and I'm just a firm believer that the authority of this board is to give authority to staff to proceed, and a conversation is not a request to proceed. And so it's my fundamental belief that RFQs should be presented to the board for approval. And that's the only point I'm trying to make here.
I appreciate that belief, but that's not how our procedure policies are written.
And
The old ones or the new ones.
it is not common.
Can't hear you.
Director Collins?
No, I thought Mario said something.
No, I didn't.
No, that was Vincent, I guess.
We can proceed. I've made my point, so we can proceed, and hopefully my clarification is clear as to what my question is.
Okay. So I will need a motion on the item.
Mr. Chairman, I will move for approval, but I also would like if we could send to the board so that they will know, and I don't mind putting this together, the scoring rubric that was used, a list of the committee, the firms that were interviewed, because again, I spent at least 10 to 15 hours on this on last month, and I feel like we have done a very thorough job. So I would like to present that formally at some point to the board, but make sure that everyone sees it and knows what that actual process was.
Yeah, and Director Johnson Rose, first of all, thank you so much for the time that you did spend, because it was extraordinary to have your expertise in the conversation. But in the board memo, it does summarize most of these steps, but we absolutely could send the scoring matrix if that is of interest to the board. And we did include the proposal, which includes all the steps as I described them that would be undertaken in this exercise, as well as the profile of the firm.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Rose, Johnson Rose, and I do appreciate your time as well. I know this is a large task and many firms were considered. And I do believe the firm we landed on of APD is a notable firm out of Atlanta that has done work in Houston and understands Houston's intricacies. So is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Director Castillo. Any further discussion?
I would just like to again say thank you, Director Johnson Rose. Courtney, we again are not questioning the process from the RFP forward. We're questioning the process that actually got us to the RFP. I feel like this there was more discussion and more information provided from staff today than the previous time that this was discussed. And so the question and the concern is about how we got here, not the process to make the selection. And so I just wanted to clarify that again.
And I would also like to clarify that what she said, but as I mentioned to Mr. Dice, it's difficult for me and I can't vote for it.
Understood. Okay. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
No.
Any opposed?
No.
Lampley,
No.
opposed.
I think I'm going to do a roll call vote. Just make sure we have everybody's votes counted correctly. It looks like we've, Director Zeiss will vote yes. Director Collins?
No.
No. Director DeAnda?
Yes.
Yes. Director Galloway?
No.
No. Director Castillo?
Yes.
Yes. Director Lampley?
No.
Director Johnson Rose?
Yes.
And Director Jackson?
No.
No. So it is a tie vote, so the motion does not pass. And I believe that's all the board members, unless I missed anybody. I don't think so.
Victor Rodrigon had to drop off at 1:07.
Yep. So tie vote, so the motion does not pass. Moving on, item number 7E, consideration and possible action to accept the fiscal year 2020 annual audit report. Is there a motion?
Move to accept.
Thank you, Director Galloway. Move to second.
Second.
Second by Director Collins. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
No one opposed, motion carries. Item number 8, board member comments.
Just as I discussed with you, I sent you a GIMS map for the City of Houston infrastructure. Could you have staff denote on that map the lots that we own instead of gas?
Do I see it? No, I don't have it in front of me right now. Let me see if I can pull it up.
GIMS map that shows the city's infrastructure.
Yes,
I can resend it if you want me to.
No, we haven't. We do not have the internal capacity to be able to do a very good map. So part of the planning firm's role was going to be doing our first map. So we will figure out how we can accomplish the task that you're asking.
Yeah, but I would use the GIMS map that shows the water, sewer, and drainage.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Collins. Any board member comments?
Yes, I just wanna thank everybody for my well wishes for my birthday. Appreciate it, and thank y'all so much.
Quite welcome.
And pictures. We want pictures.
Oh, they too pretty. You might want to put them in the magazine, so I better keep them hid.
All right.
When I become 80, I'm gonna call you and ask you how.
Oh boy.
I'm glad you had a great birthday.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Director Galloway.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Moved by Director Lampley. I apologize. Give it a second.
Second.
Second by Director Galloway. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Have a
Matt.
great weekend.